All right, welcome. We are at 2 minutes past 1 Central European time, and it's time to start another round of SALTO Digital Dialogues. We are already up at session 8, which is momentarily confusing. Like, where does the time fly? Because I feel we just started with session 2. But in any case, let's keep going. Before we jump into the topic of today, I'll very quickly go through the general guidelines of the dialogues, as you know. So if you are new here, here's some basic information. If not, hand sides, and we'll get to the interesting tidbit in a moment. So as you know, all the sessions are recorded, and afterwards the recording will be available on YouTube for you to rewatch or share with your colleagues and friends or whoever might be interested. And the Q&A session in the end, which is the internal discussion for the national agencies, that part will not be recorded. And I will make it very clear when we transition from the open recording to the internal non-recorded part. Our guideline says keep your microphone muted and your camera turned off, but you in the audience actually don't have an option because we are not allowing you to unmute yourself before the Q&A session in the end. And as always, if you experience any technical issues, you can write in the chat, and our chat host Jaakko can, or my colleague Jaakko can try to help you, but usually it helps if your device, whichever that may be, is up to date as far as possible. Content here is aimed for national agencies staff primarily, but if you are watching this as a generally interested citizen on YouTube afterwards, you are very much welcome to use and reuse anything you see here. For those in the live session, do ask any questions and make comments in the chat or in the Q&A section of the webinar, so we can really exchange and dig deeper into the topics from the viewpoints that really interest you the most. And you are all have been invited also to the house space community, so please keep exchanging there as well. We always create a separate archive page for each topic in the dialogues. That's it. And for now, I will hand over to our guest speakers. Today we are talking about SELFIE and various applications and various viewpoints to it, what it means for systemic development of digital transformation in general, and all of that lovely jazz. But I will let our speakers introduce themselves. All yours.
Thank you so much. We will start our presentation. I will first kind of introduce myself. My name is Reinier van der Welen. I work with DJ EAC as the lead on SELFIE on EAC side, and I work on the digital education, digital ecosystem and evidence team. I'll give the floor to my colleague Nicoletta to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here today. I'm Nicoletta Iannuzzu. I'm leading the SELFIE project from the side of the Joint Research Center, where we work on research supporting the developments and the implementation of the tool and informing policies around it. So maybe I will pass the floor to Deidre then.
Thank you. Like Nicoletta and Reinier, I work at the European Commission. I'm in the same department as Reinier, so working on education. Our department, known as EAC, covers education, culture, youth and sport. And I work in the schools policy team, and I work on two different issues. I work on sustainability in education, so looking at climate education, climate change, and how we're responding to the challenges of the green transition. And I also work on the digital side, in particular on teacher digital education, and that's what I'll be talking about today in a moment. So thank you very much.
We'll start our presentation. As I said, we were going to talk about SELFIE, which is a tool for collective reflection on digital technologies. First, I will speak a little bit on the SELFIE for Schools tool, give a little bit of the political context, and then walk step by step how the tool is used and how you can use it yourself, if it's applicable to you. I will then give the floor to my colleague Nicoletta from the JRC, and she will talk on the impact of SELFIE, the use of Erasmus programs that take SELFIE as a basis. And afterwards, Deirdre will talk about the SELFIE for Teachers tool, which specifically is targeted at teachers. For SELFIE, well, SELFIE is actually an abbreviation. It stands for Self-Reflection on Effective Learning by Fostering the Use of Innovative Educational Technology. It is a self-assessment tool created by the European Commission in collaboration with the Joint Research Centre that helps schools realize where they stand in their use of digital technologies. It is an anonymous questionnaire that targets the whole school and involves the students, the teachers, and the school leaders as well. Through this anonymous questionnaire and this self-reflection exercise, the school will get kind of a snapshot of their current strengths and weaknesses when it comes to their use of digital technology, either in teaching and learning or in assessment. The tool is open to everyone in primary, secondary education and vet education. The tool was developed based on the Digital Competent Framework for Organizations, or DIGCOMP.org, which is a framework that outlines the competences that are needed in this digital age. Bit of the political context. The SELFIE tool was launched in 2018 under the first Digital Education Action Plan, which ran from 2018 to 2020. This was the Commission's attempt to put digital education as more of a priority. Under this action plan, SELFIE was launched and created, and it stated in this action plan that the SELFIE assessment tool should have the goal to reach at least 1 million teachers, trainers, and learners by the end of 2019, both within the EU member state, but also the Western Balkan. SELFIE was continued, developed, and continued to be implemented under the next and current Digital Education Action Plan, which was launched in 2021 and will run until 2027. We're almost in the middle, and we have achieved some notable milestones already. This Digital Education Action Plan was a bit more ambitious. It has two main priorities, namely fostering the development of a high-performing digital education ecosystem, and second, enhancing digital skills, competences for the digital transformation. And this is also the priority that where SELFIE is the most aligned with. As I said, under the since 2021, when the Digital Education Plan was launched and initiated, we have achieved some notable milestones. Just a few to name. We have launched 2 council recommendations, one on enabling factors for successful digital education, and one on improving the provision of digital skills. These council recommendations have been approved by the Commission and are now being negotiated in the Council. We hope that these negotiations will be finalized in short term. Another milestone was the creation of the Digital Education Hub, which is a community of practice where stakeholders within the space of digital education can come together and follow workshops, have peer learning opportunities, and share best practices. We have also created 2 sets of guidelines for educators. These are practical guidelines that give educators sort of handholds in 2 particular topics. One is on the ethical use of AI in education, a very relevant topic nowadays. And one is on a disinformation and digital literacy, which is also not to be underestimated and very important for teachers to know more about, I think. Since its launch, we have, of course, created more or implemented and improved SELFIE quite a bit. One topic that came up, although SELFIE is already supporting vet education, one gap that there still was is to support specific schools that employ an apprenticeship model, which is part learning and part working. To fill kind of this gap, we created a module for SELFIE in October 2021, or it was launched in 2021, to better support this part of the vet education sector. What it does is basically it has the same structure as the SELFIE, the normal SELFIE tool, but it also includes an additional target group, namely the in-company trainers. That was all on the political side, the political context, and the two tools. Just more concretely on how to actually use the tool and set it up. As I mentioned, the tool is based on the digital education competence framework for organizations. And the questions that are in the anonymous questionnaire, therefore, also center on the main categories that are outlined there. To set up a SELFIE exercise, basically a school can sign up and it will have two school coordinators that will coordinate the exercise and set it up. They will log into the tool and there they can set up the questionnaire. The questionnaire has a standard part for the three target groups, the teachers, the students, and the school leaders. The teachers have the longest questionnaire, it's about 52 questions, and the school leaders and the students have a shorter questionnaire, all adapted to that specific target group. There is also an option to introduce 10 optional questions that the school coordinators can specify specific to that school's context and what they want to get out of the questionnaire. Once the questionnaire is set up, the school coordinators will get a link that will then be sent to the teacher, students, and school leaders within the school that can then reply to the questionnaire. And then the school coordinators will get a report that kind of looks like this. The questions in SELFIE are set up on a 5-point scale from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. All the target groups will answer these questions from 1 to 5, and then in the report there will be an average shown, both per category or per questions. You see in the example here that there is also an average per target group. You see the blue are the school leaders, the red are the teachers, the yellow are the students, and the green are the in-company trainers. This report can be viewed online, where it's more of an interactive thing, where the school leaders can quickly look up specific data or specific questions. It can also just be downloaded in a PDF or in an Excel to be easier to share or work in for specific purposes. SELFIE in numbers then. SELFIE has been rather successful over the years that it has launched. As I mentioned before, in the first under the first Digital Education Action Plan, the goal was to reach about 1 million users. We have definitely achieved that, because currently we have about 5.5 million users in 83 countries. meaning about 28,000 schools have taken this SELFIE exercise. SELFIE for work-based learning is a little bit smaller. It was also released 3 years later. So they have about a user base of 40,000 users in about 15 countries. Notable here is also that during the COVID pandemic, we saw quite an uptake of SELFIE. The COVID pandemic really highlighted the importance of digital technologies in education, and we saw that renewed interest or new interest definitely during the years after the COVID pandemic. We see quite an uptake in especially Spain and Portugal. This has quite a logical explanation, as these countries have definitely embraced the SELFIE tool as a useful tool, as they have integrated the use of the tool into their national and regional strategies, and therefore the uptake is a lot higher, and we are very pleased with that. To note that there is also in this list a lot of countries that it shows that SELFIE is also used beyond the borders of the EU. As I said, it is available in 40 languages, not only the EU 24, but also in many other countries and languages. I will now pass the floor to my colleague Nicoletta to talk more about SELFIE and the community.
Yes, thank you very much, Rainier. We have seen, like what Rainier presented already, is more like the uptake of SELFIE from schools, and we can see this way there's impact of the tool in the community and in the sorry about this. And in the actual users, so it's the direct impact, but also there's impact of SELFIE in the policies as it has been integrated in national digital education policies. For example, the uptake of SELFIE in Portugal and Spain, it is very much linked to the fact that the tool was introduced as a recommendation in order to support the digital transformation in schools. Another interesting dimension in the impact of SELFIE, which helps the tool to grow and offer much more support to the end users, is the embracement from the research community. And actually, there have been, until last year, about 30 EU-funded projects using SELFIE, mainly from Erasmus+, and 140 peer-reviewed research papers, which help us as well to improve the tool and provide the support needed for the schools. So Rainier, if we can pass on to the next slide, because I cannot handle them. So here we included a couple of forward-looking Erasmus Plus projects, which focused on the use of SELFIE. And I think they're very good examples. We only chose 3 out of the 30, because they helped a lot the growth of SELFIE. One is the Sherpa project, which created a pedagogical toolkit supporting the schools to take action after using the SELFIE results. Because based on what Rainier said, school leaders, teachers, and students respond to a set of questions on where they stand with respect to the technology use in their practice. And as soon as the tool generates the report, it is expected from then to reflect on the report and take some action. So the Sherpa does exactly that, guides them with resources on how to think and decide which actions they are going to take in each of the different SELFIE areas presented earlier. Another Erasmus Plus project, which is still ongoing, the Sherpa project is finished, but the toolkit is available and I have included the URL, is the Digital Schools Awards. And this project is a network actually of schools which what they actually do is that they support schools and they foster peer learning, and they introduce the concept of of a critical friend, which supports the schools through the process of using the SELFIE results as a basis to develop their digital capacity. And finally, the project Reflecting for Change focuses basically on supporting schools to embrace and sustain innovation. Next slide, please. And since we're speaking about like SELFIE, we wanted to see, like, we have designed a tool with all these characteristics already presented, but there is a big question: does it work? And if we move to the next slide, in 2021 until 2022, an external organization, university from Spain, implemented a study with 15 schools in 3 countries, Spain, Cyprus, and the Netherlands. In this study participated 350 school leaders, teachers, and students. And the first phase focused on understanding what happens when schools use SELFIE. And the second phase focused on designing. The researchers worked with the schools to design an action plan on the digital development of the school and see what plans were produced and which processes and which context can help the schools to engage in this process. The output of this study was country-specific results for the different countries, but also cross-cutting, seeing patterns emerging in all 3 countries. The reason we focused only on a small number of schools in a small number of countries is to do with the fact that we were very interested in looking not only if SELFIE works or not, but also the details, why and under what circumstances. Next slide, please. So from our research, what we saw is that the very broad response is that yes, SELFIE works. And the first thing that we saw coming up is very much aligned to what SELFIE is designed to do. It helps the users to gain an awareness of strong and weak points. So as you can see in the example I put there, is that the teachers say that SELFIE has been useful to detect the school needs. And then as soon as they identify these needs, then they focus on how they can support with training, resources. But there is another dimension which is very interesting, because the teacher says that while completing and responding to the SELFIE survey, it was useful for them to reflect on what they're doing. So it's a dual thing here. It's not only that the teachers provide information for the school, but they also reflect on what they're doing, and this can be a basis to cause changes in their practice. So why is awareness of strong and weak points important? Number one, because for the digital transformation, first thing is that we need to know where we stand. The other thing which is interesting is that SELFIE, with the areas and the questions, helps the schools to understand what digital transformation in an organization entails. And the final thing is that SELFIE can inspire action. I will speak more in the next slides about it. Next slide, please. So, and when I was looking at at SALTO, I was looking at how they define digital transformation, and they said one thing which I think it's very important. It's common in SELFIE. It's that digital transformation is not the business of one person, but it's a collective effort. So our analysis showed that SELFIE impact is higher when the tool, when it's introduced in the school, it is explained to all the participants why SELFIE the schools are taking SELFIE and what is the process. But what is even more important is that SELFIE results are shared to all who participated in the exercise. Otherwise, it's one more questionnaire, and sometimes even the teachers, the students don't even remember that they filled it. The other thing which is important, again, is that the school community participates and has a say, in what happens next. So based on the SELFIE results, and this is the recommendation of SELFIE, it is also supported by the Sherpa Pedagogical Toolkit, there is a follow-up discussion on the results with the whole school community. What happens now is that what we saw, none of the schools who participated in our study shared the results with the students. And keep in mind that we have high upper and lower secondary school students, and we have also primary school students, but the last two grades, 5th and 6th. And only 32 of the teachers had received the SELFIE report. And many of them received the report because they were part of the digital transformation team. So this is a practice that needs to be enhanced and evolved. And there are reasons why this is not there yet, because SELFIE is not just a tool to be used. It's connected with a reflective practice, which is not yet there in the schools. So this is something that needs time to develop and be established. Next slide, please. I mentioned before that SELFIE can inspire action, and here we have two very interesting examples. One is that the SELFIE report can become a basis of strategic and top-down decisions for action. In the first example, it seems like you can see that the leadership team renewed the plan they had, and they decided to focus on improving students' digital competence. On the other hand, we can see also bottom-up action, which is very interesting because you don't have somebody from the leadership saying what the teachers want to do, but based on the participation, the teachers themselves can have the agency to decide that they might want to shift and change their practices. The teacher here says, I have decided to include more digital and interactive activities and gamification techniques. So I think this is quite interesting because top-down and bottom-up action is something that can bring very interesting and fruitful results. Next slide. When we discussed with the teachers and the school leaders, we wanted to understand which areas of included in the SELFIE they considered to be highly impacted by the use of the tool. So here, probably, I'm not sure how well you can see the lines, but the gray and the blue is the perception for high and moderate impact, whereas the orange and the red indicate no or low impact. What is interesting, if you look at this graph, is that the highest aspects, those who the teachers consider and the school leaders that they are linked to strategic and organizational action. So, for example, they think that the use of SELFIE can help the school for their leadership practices, to their investment of the digital infrastructure, and to create strategies and follow-up actions and plans. And I think when we're speaking about the digital transformation, these aspects are very important because this process is very complex and the strategic view and changes at the organizational level are very important. So SELFIE can play a critical role here. Next slide. Finally, some key conclusions is that as part of the digital transformation, but also SELFIE as being an instrument that can help this process, it is very important to have in place procedures to engage the whole school community. This came very strongly out of the results of this study. There are other things we saw as well, which although there are some resources already available, for example, the Ministry of Education in Spain has provided a structure for the creation of action plan and MOOC in training teachers on how to use SELFIE. It seems that there are these kind of resources and this kind of support should be also supported by what we call social innovation actions. And some suggestion we got from the study was it would be great if schools had a platform or a digital space where they could collaborate in designing their action plans and taking action after taking SELFIE, because that's something which interests very much them. We also have explored the concept of hackathons, and by now there are 3 hackathons run already for the schools to collaborate and in a specific time and space to work into creating an action plan, and then leave out of the hackathon with something concrete, but also with collaborations. And so there is also the Digital Education Hackathon, which has a specific strand for the digital, the development of the digital capacity of organizations, where schools or like networks or agencies can invite the schools to take place, participate in this hackathon and invite the schools to take place. So in the end, they can collaborate in the creation of the plan. And finally, the concept of school networks is very useful for the schools to be part of when they're asked to create a digital strategy. Another thing that came out from the study is that in several cases, schools were asking, these results are very useful for us, but they're useful for the decision makers and the ministries. And here, what we are now doing is that we are providing aggregated and anonymized results to the Ministries of Education so that they have an idea of the trends. And please keep in mind that these are subjective opinions. It's not the evaluation of the digital capacity of schools, but it's a very good indicator of what happens in key aspects of the digital development of schools. So SELFIE overall, as I mentioned before, is a part of a cultural change. Like things need to change within the school. They need to have processes for reflection, for discussion about what is happening with digital technologies, and it should be accompanied by organizational changes, which means that the schools need to have the support, the time, and the space to engage with collective reflection and action taking on their digital development. And next and final slide. So I would like to close with an excerpt from Cuban, who says that education is not just complicated, but complex. And it's an interlocking system of learners, educations, technologies, and broader social contexts, with all kinds of invisible linkages and unexpected consequences. Trying to accelerate learning by ramping up technologies like putting rockets on butterflying wings. More force does not lead linearly to more progress. The reason I thought that this extract is very relevant to what we're discussing with self-reflection tools is that they try to identify and see all these interlinkages and all these different factors and players that they are involved in this process, so that we take a critical stance when we're thinking which technology is good for our schools and fits into the need of our school, and not just running after the technical developments. Thank you very much. That was the last slide from my side, and will now pass the floor to Deidre. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Nicoletta. So I'm going to take over now and talk about the SELFIE for Teachers tool. So you've heard from Renia and Nicoletta about the tool, which is really for schools, and the unit of usage is really the schools as a whole. It's about digital planning. It's about that overall kind of continuous improvements that my colleagues just spoke about. Now I'm going to talk about the tool, which does more of a deep dive on teacher digital skills. It's a younger tool, SELFIE. The tool for schools is coming up to its 5th anniversary. SELFIE for Teachers we launched 2 years ago, actually, at an event in Slovenia with teachers and students. So yeah, 2 years till now, and I'm going to talk you through how this tool can be useful, how it works, and then you're going to see some similarities and some differences with the tool that's really designed for school usage. Okay, so SELFIE for Teachers, you've got the link there. It's fully multilingual, like the SELFIE tool. Next slide, please. So yeah, I mean, you know, what were we trying to solve with this tool? I mean, the word you've heard a lot already today is context, you know. I mean, there's no absolutes in using digital technology. There's no one right way to use it. It's really about you know, the school in their context, the teacher in their context, the learning goals, the learning activity in hand. So it's going to look very, very different from one context to another, from one school to another, and indeed from one teacher to another. So as a teacher of primary school, how can I use technology to enhance learning? How can I use it to communicate with families, for example? As a maths teacher, how can I use technologies for my particular case? Another aspect of our tool is really looking at how we can support our students to build their digital skills as well. So it's about me as a professional, as a teacher, but also about how I can support my learners to build their digital capacities as well. And that really important piece around reflection, which we all feel is a very powerful way of improvement, whether that's reflecting as a school, as a whole, as a school community, or indeed reflecting as an individual teacher or as a team of teachers working together. So next slide, please. So yeah, I mean, Renia has spoken a bit about our policy context. You know, not surprisingly, in the Digital Education Action Plan, we point to the importance of teachers. So we really feel that digital capacity, digital competence is a core skill for every educator in the contemporary classroom. It really should be embedded in all areas of teacher professional development. And SELFIE for Teachers tool is a contribution to this. It's a tool that's free, that's online, that any teacher can use to help reflect on their skills, what's working well, less well, and how they can continue to improve. So that is action 5 of the Digital Education Action Plan, just to say a few words on the overall kind of policy context. So next, please. So like the SELFIE tool for schools, we started as well with a framework. So the European Commission, working together with our colleagues in the research department, we have developed a number of frameworks in the digital field. So René and Nicoletta spoke about the framework, which is for digital organization. So what does it mean to use technology as a school, as a campus, as a creche, a kindergarten, you know, wherever the phase or stage of education is. And we also have a similar framework for educators, again, for all sectors of education, right from the early years up to adult learning. So what does it actually mean when we talk about being digitally competent, digital skills as an educator? In this framework, we have broken it down. I'm going to speak more about that in a moment. But just to say that at the origins of SELFIE for Teachers, there was also this framework. The framework is great. It's conceptual. It's used in all over Europe and indeed the world to develop training materials. It's used in curricula for teacher education faculties. But from that framework, we built a very practical tool that can be used as well by teachers and groups of teachers. So next slide, please. So yeah, there I'm showing you the framework itself, and you can see that there are different aspects to being a digitally capable teacher. There on the left, you'll see educators' professional competences. So, you know, how do I use technology for my own learning? How can I use it to collaborate with my colleagues as well? Now, the forced switch to online during the pandemic obviously led to a massive kind of upskilling here, with teachers becoming more aware of the potential of technology use, also the difficulties in using technology, the potential risks as well. But there was definitely an upskilling there in terms of technology use. In the middle of that chart, you really see the pedagogical practice. So how can I use it for my assessments, so for measuring learning, for designing lesson plans, for example, and how can I help make the classroom more inclusive and more engaging and meaningful learning as well. And there on the right in the pink, you have the student digital skills piece. So that's the goal of teachers, to also help their students use technology in critical and creative ways. So next, please. So in that framework, you're going to find a number of levels. So we're not saying that everybody needs to be like a super teacher, like an innovator in each of these different areas. It really is a journey. And maybe in some areas you're just a little bit aware of what you can do, or maybe you're further advanced and you're also kind of working with your colleagues and you're doing maybe some training within your school on that particular field. So just to say that it's an ongoing journey and that there's different levels. And again, we've reflected that in the tool. So next, please. Yeah, so there you've got a glimpse of what kind of statements or questions are in the tool itself. You're going to see those elements from the framework in the tool. We have around 30, just over 30 statements that the teacher will answer in the tool, taking around 30 minutes or so. So there'll be reflective statements that they'll answer. Thinking about their own practice, you know, how are they using technology maybe for assessment right now in the classroom, or for collaboration with colleagues, for working with families, communicating with the students. It can take lots of different forms, of course. And then in the tool itself, you'll find those levels, those proficiency levels back. And, you know, we've tried to make it what we want it to be, as a positive exercise as well. So, you know, I'm exploring, or maybe I'm really an expert, or I'm leading as well. So there's no, you know, absolutes. We're not looking for everybody to score kind of highly across the board. It's really about having more kind of knowledge on where I'm at and pinpointing, maybe, you know, even understanding what's going very well and pinpointing those areas for improvement. So next, please. So very practically, if you want to use SELFIE for teachers, you can use it at any time as a teacher, as a group of teachers. I'll explain the group part in a moment. You need to create an EU login account. You just need to do that once. And that's because you can answer maybe 10 of the questions, take a break. We know teachers are always interrupted, and then they can come back and complete the whole self-assessment in different sittings. So they respond to those 32 statements across those different areas we just saw, taking around a half an hour, and we're hearing between kind of 20 minutes to a half an hour to answer those questions. What's interesting is they get an automated feedback report as well with results and tips. So that feedback report says, well, in this area, you could maybe consider doing this to kind of, you know, improve your usage of technology in this field. Have you considered this? Now, these are quite generic feedback. We're not giving, you know, feedback for specifically for my subject. I'm a history teacher, for example, not at all. These are more generic results that they're giving, but the feedback we're getting from teachers is they're finding that feedback report very useful to plan their next steps. We recognize teachers' participation. They can get a digital badge, and they can also download a certificate. Now, this is not a certificate that certifies their skills. It's a certificate to say that they've spent the time doing the self-reflection exercise. Like the SELFIE for Schools tool, this is anonymized, so I answer in an anonymized capacity. So next, please. So I mentioned that it can be used by any teacher, student teacher, any teacher who's practicing as well. And it can also be used as part of a group exercise too. So what does that mean? It could be all the staff in a school. Maybe at the start of the school year, they decide to do the exercise together. It can be with the school leadership team to help them identify training needs within the school. So it really is, there's different use cases. It could be, and I think for the audience today of interest, an Erasmus Plus project as well, where a group that are participating in a project on digital skills that might have a digital component could maybe do the exercise at the start of the project, monitoring some progress along the way. We have a lot of our e-twinning community as well, very interested in using the tool as part of a group exercise as well. So I just wanted to point out that's very important. It can be me as a teacher at any time doing the tool, or it can be working together as part of a school, a teacher education faculty, a project or program, for example. So next, please. As I said, you get this immediate and personalized feedback. You get an automated report, which you can download. Like the SELFIE tool for schools, there's a lot of data there. You can dive down into different data. You can display it in different ways. So it's a very interactive tool, and you can also download your PDF as well. So next, please. Yeah, you can also choose to see that feedback per item. So you can just go into the area. You can choose, okay, I want to see how I'm supporting my student digital skills. So you can really just focus on that area and download your results and your feedback too. And there you're going to see the level. So again, that's not about being, you know, an innovator in each of these fields. Feedback we've had from teachers is maybe they're very confident in using technology for the teaching and learning piece, but they are less comfortable in using it in terms of communicating with the students or fellow staff members or families. So it can really depend where I'm doing well or less well. So it's not about being excellent across the board by any means. So next, please. Yeah, and like the SELFIE for Schools tool, this is really about, you know, monitoring progress. It's not about ticking a box and I'm digitally skilled and digitally capable. You know, technologies change, the context in schools change, students change. So it's an ongoing process as well. So I can monitor my progress, for example, doing it on a yearly basis or as part of a project at the beginning and at the end of the project. And as I said, you get an acknowledgement and participation for your time in taking part in the tool. So next, please. And just to mention very quickly that we designed this in a very collaborative way. We did multiple rounds of testing with teachers in different countries. We had focus groups. We ran user testing as well, because unless this tool is useful and usable and relevant to the teacher, then it's not going to fly. It's not going to take off. So we really made sure that we tested early iterations of the tool, getting feedback on the results, the layout, the feedback report, so we can continue to improve the service we deliver to teachers. So next, please. Yeah, we're up to, actually, I just checked the figures there this morning, and it's 170,000 users. Here is just a few kind of testimonies, a primary teacher saying, yeah, it gave me a chance to reflect on where I'm at with my teaching practice. It's showing me what's working well and less well. A secondary school teacher saying that that visual display of data was useful for them as well. And there we have a teacher trainer. It's helping my student teachers, you know, gauge where they're at in terms of using technology in their teaching. So I think Nicoletta kind of made the point that sometimes that process of self-reflection is very useful to see the kind of potential that's there and the opportunities. So in a way, almost doing the exercise is a learning experience as well. So next, please. So yeah, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. So just to say, you know, that we believe that the teachers are, you know, they're learning designers, and I think the feedback you can get through the tool, either using it individually or collaboratively, can help design your learning path as well, maybe identify your kind of training needs. That group element is very powerful as well, you know, working collaboratively together to see maybe what my training needs are as a group within a school or a project as well. It allows teachers to kind of, you know, implement those new skills, those new competence in their practice, and then to monitor progress. So next, please. So yeah, just to say that we have support material available in all EU languages. We have a number of videos and we have infographics as well, which might be of use to you as you work with your own constituents, your beneficiaries. Those of you in national agencies might find this of use as well. So next, please. And just to say a very quick word on the research that we're carrying out. So again, you know, trying to dig deep on the use cases, looking to see where SELFIE for Teachers is helping, where we can improve the tool further. So we have some very exciting research coming out from the countries I've listed on the slide here, where we're testing the tool in very different settings. You know, how is it working in small rural schools? How is it working with our student teachers? So in teacher education faculties as well, how it's working with different subject community of practice as well. So for example, a group of maths teachers or geography teachers using the tool. So we will have some interesting findings coming out in the next couple of months from our case studies. So next, please. And just to say briefly that we're adapting the tool for early childhood education and care. That was a demand that came from the sector, feeling that digital technologies has its place in early years. We need to be extremely careful about safe and appropriate use of technologies for that age cohort, but it does have a place in terms of the educators in early childhood working together. A hugely important piece is communication with families as well, you know, active use of technology too, maybe outdoors use of technology. So we're adapting and simplifying the statements for that sector as well, where there will be things that will be less relevant and things thinking assessment, exams, of course, not so useful, but of course the whole piece around child well-being, safety and responsible use is crucial. So that's coming soon. We're testing over the next few months, and we hope to launch that version next year. So yeah, in terms of using the tool, of course, we hope that you will promote it to the people that you're working with. As we've seen with SELFIE, often we see that countries are linking it to their own national and regional policies and programs. We see that in, for example, Portugal and with Spain as well. So, you know, it can be used in this wider context. So as a region, I have a goal to help my teachers digitally upskill. So the tool can be helpful in that. And we have a number of cases where a country or a region has taken the tool and actually adapted it to their own needs and added questions. I'm thinking of Flanders, in Belgium in particular, where they've taken our statements and they've added additional statements for the school leadership team as well. So next, please. So that's it in a nutshell, really. It's similar in terms that it's about taking a selfie or a snapshot on where you're at. So both tools really believe in the power of self-reflection. Selfie for Teachers has different use cases. It can be me as the individual teacher. It can be me as a student teacher still at university and teacher training. It can be me as part of an e-twinning community project and any kind of Erasmus project where there's a digital skills component. So it can be used and deployed in many, many different ways, individually and collectively. So I've given you links there to support material, and I'm happy to be contacted on any questions that you have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you to all presenters. Now is the chance to ask some, probe a bit deeper and ask some very good and maybe even challenging questions from our speakers. And I will let my colleague Jaakko go first. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Juha, and thank you all. Really magnificent presentation. I may have met you in a SELFIE seminar back in 2018 or 2019 in Madrid, but yeah, so now it's nice to see you now in our SALTO Digital Dialogues. But I have a couple of questions. The first one that really I was thinking about is there a particular trend in participating countries, participant numbers other than Spain and Portugal? Are there policies set in some of the countries to implement SELFIE or other policy initiatives or local characteristics with the countries? Why some of the countries have adopted SELFIE and maybe some of the countries have not, in terms of figures, adopted this as wide scale as others?
So is this about SELFIE for Teachers, both dated Europe?
Yeah.
And then
I might kick. I think we probably all have something to say on that. But you know, when we developed it, we looked at what was there. So in 2017, when we were, building the tool, and we could see that some countries had tools that were, working perfectly well. So our idea was never to kind of impose this tool. As you know, policy cooperation and education is voluntary. But we could see that there were kind of gaps in the market. We could see that yes, there were existing tools, but did those tools actually ask the student viewpoint? So I think we weren't, there were existing tools, but I think we were coming up with something a little bit different, and that took off very differently. Maybe originally we thought it would be really bottom-up usage, so it would be schools kind of telling other schools, but then quickly we could see where a ministry was promoting it. Maybe it was just saying, look, the tool is there, or maybe it was going really that step further and saying, hold on, let's really actively promote the use of the tool, maybe even link it to financial support or grants, for example. So there's no two ways SELFIE is being deployed. It's so contextualized in the country and in the region, and we have never kind of said there is one way. We really put it out there, and it's taken all of these different forms. I'll stop there and let the colleagues come in as well.
Yes, and I think also the fact that we have big numbers from Spain. Spain is a big country. We have big numbers from Belgium as well, but Belgium has less schools. There was an uptake of SELFIE from Slovakia. They had a project where they integrated the tool, but as Deirdre said, it's very much contextualized. And me being Greek, I know the example of Greece. There is a process of evaluation of teachers in schools, and there they have some cautions, especially when it comes to SELFIE. And I think SELFIE for teachers is the same, but SELFIE is much more sensitive because, like, it's a school. And we take very good care to ensure anonymization, because this is a self-reflection exercise. And if the teachers in the schools do not feel that they have the freedom to say what they think, then it stops being a self-reflection exercise, like meeting the expectations of, I don't know, the ministry or whoever. And that's why we're trying to emphasize more the concept of development rather than the concept of ranking, because it's not, it's more like as a basis for discussion. But I think my contribution is more into what Jadra said. It's like a contextualized, very much contextualized the uptake. And like as a final point is that member states are very interested in the SELFIE data. Now we are providing aggregated anonymous data, but we're discussing the option of, again, ensuring the anonymization of schools to provide raw data to the ministers, because they want to, and this goes very much along with the recent council recommendations, which are discussed now, that the monitoring of the digital transformation, because now you have many actors taking up action. And I think SELFIE for teachers, they have a very good way of capturing what's going on in the practice. And if we move towards this direction, this can be a game changer, I think, in the uptake as well.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add there. I think a point Nicoletta made that probably needs to be emphasized is that, yeah, it is useful data, but it is a self-reflection exercise. So there is kind of a caveat there with the usability of the data in isolation. Like there is a limit with the data where you cannot compare or draw any conclusions solely from a self-assessment exercise. It might be useful with a combination of data sets in a larger scope. And of course, it's very useful for the school itself as a self-exercise. But on a larger scale, this when we want to keep the anonymization, the limitations of a self-reflection exercise should also be communicated.
Thank you. Very good answers, and I think maybe some of the countries also have their own development tools that have already existed before SELFIE regarding the teachers' self-assessment. For instance, I think Ireland and Finland has had some tools that maybe are being used parallel with SELFIE tool. But yeah, this is really interesting topic. But I want to move forward with my another question. Maybe Deirdre, you already touched this topic a little bit. That are there any examples how SELFIE has been utilized or could be utilized in Erasmus Plus or European Solidarity Corps projects? Do you have any great examples?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nicoletta mentioned the nice kind of suite of projects that we have where SELFIE has been used, and now more and more we see SELFIE for teachers being used. So, you know, I suppose I'm a bit biased, but I do think it's a powerful tool, especially if you're in the business of, you know, looking at teacher digital skills development. I mean, you know, it gives you the kind of baseline data from the beginning, and then you can see how that would improve. And we can see it as well. There's an interest there in the teacher academies too. You'll be aware of these kind of large scale projects. They're centralized projects. We run the calls out of Brussels, but because digital is such a key focus of the Erasmus Programme, we can see that teacher education faculties have a really strong interest in SELFIE for teachers. And, you know, like the frameworks, I think what the feedback we get is it stops the kind of, you know, wasting time on what do we mean by digital skills, you know. I mean, the frameworks maybe aren't perfect and you might add what you think are missing components, but I think they're very useful conversation starter in a way. And that's the feedback we get on the tools as well. So, you know, I feel that it really, you know, it should be there if you are a project or you're, you know, you're looking at working with projects on digital skills. I really would recommend it. especially because the usage is very flexible. It's not, you know, SELFIE can only be deployed in the unit of a school, whereas SELFIE for teachers really can be used by a project. And
so if I can add to this, we, as I said, like I focused on the projects which they did research and they did development, but they're like until last year we had 30 more Erasmus Plus projects which were using the tools in the way they just described, like being as an instrument to work towards their development of their digital capacity. And there is another key, I think, which cuts across all tools, is that, you know, SELFIE and SELFIE for Teachers, they provide a common language for discussion. So it's very good when a project plans partnerships and you have different stakeholders having a common basis to start discussing about digital capacity development. So I think this is another key takeaway for these kind of tools.
Thank you. I think we maybe move forward. Juha, do you have any questions?
Yes, I would poke a bit maybe on kind of the edges of what SELFIE is meant for. You already mentioned that under development is application for, or how to apply SELFIE for early childcare as well. And coming from the youth field, I realize that you are perhaps not experts in the youth field, but I see a lot of common things here. If I look at the SELFIE areas, for example, leadership, collaboration, networking, everything is relevant to youth work or digital youth work as well. I mean, maybe I would change pedagogy support to training materials, and I would change pedagogy implementation to youth work practice, but that's pretty much it. So very little changes would make it feel very applicable to the youth field as well. Now, my question to you is, how do you feel would this fit in your experience, and has there been any kind of initiatives or discussions around the topic of maybe doing a youth field implementation as well?
who wants to take that one? But I'm happy to say a few words if the others want to add. Just to, you know, if we go back to the kind of origins of this, that framework that we had for organizations is meant for all kinds of educational organizations. So it could be as applicable in higher ed as it would be in adult learning, informal learning education provider, why not? Early childhood. But we realized we couldn't just design a tool for everybody. So we kind of took a decision back then that we really would just start with schools, the school sector. And even that felt immensely challenging because we knew that every school in Europe was different. But we knew we couldn't take on like all these sectors. But we have seen some interesting kind of, you know, adaptations. I'm thinking in particular, Rennie and myself went to a launch of SELFIE for libraries about a year ago in Brussels. And that was because the library sector came to us and said, look, we're also undergoing a digital transformation, and we look at those areas and we think actually that our staff need to digitally upskill, and more our library clients are coming in and they're looking to use the Wi-Fi or technology that we have on loan. So we've seen like interesting kind of, I suppose, directions and developments. Youth field, nothing jumps to mind. Has anyone else come across youth sector? I can't think of any projects in particular, but maybe you guys have.
For
There was,
me,
yeah, go ahead, Rin. Yeah.
No, I just want to say I haven't heard of a specific discussion about the youth field in particular, but I just wanted to add that indeed, as Deirdre said, the framework is useful and applicable in multiple sectors, not only the education sector, but I think also the practice of self-evaluation or self-assessment and more of that creating a culture in an organization of self-assessment and self-improvement is definitely applicable. I just want to add that we are trying to improve the tool. I did not mention it in my presentation, but during the pandemic, for example, we added some optional questions on a blended learning. And at the moment, we are trying to work towards more questions through a study on a digital well-being. So we are working to continuously improve the tool with different topics in different ways.
And at some point, if I can jump in, we will have been asked, like, if it can be used or it can be adapted to be used to SMEs, for example, their digital development. And at some point, we have been contacted by one of the from DG Reform from the European Commission, because they were doing some work on inclusion with Portugal, and they had created self-reflection items on inclusion. So, I mean, as you were saying, the structure is there, and the process again is there for developing the specific area. So yeah, I mean, now that I was thinking, more things came into my mind.
Yeah, and I also ask because these are questions of organizational development and evaluation and impact assessment. All this stuff is in the dialogue constantly in the youth field as well. So there would be a lot that would be useful in this kind of thinking as well. Shall we give the final word to Pasi?
Well, I don't know about the final word, but you know, this SELFIE has been really a kind of success story. And what I'm really kind of fascinating, it's a tool for the leaders, how to lead the digital transformation into practice. So it's totally wonderful systemic approach. But I have two small questions or big questions. So now AI has really changed what is the digital transformation, and really kind of it's a paradigm shift, I feel, into digital education and everywhere. But also that it's something, it's not about how to use the digital tools, but it's all about the thinking skills and critical thinking and new strategies and whatever we need in the future. So what would be the SELFIE in 10 years? So how future-oriented there could be the focus on schools, because schools are a bit old-fashioned, I think, traditionally, and curriculum is always kind of based on the past knowledge. But how to get the future-oriented approach or mindset to teachers and school leaders is my question. So, and you have a lot of knowledge on this also, I think.
So since the reference is on SELFIE and organizations and DIA, I agree with you that the landscape is changing. And we are all trying to understand like what these changes mean. I think what is critical with SELFIE, if we look beyond the items, is this process of critical thinking when it comes about which technologies we're using and under which circumstances. And I think this is a great, and it comes more and more as an important topic in the discussion about digital transformation, because up till now we're speaking about acceleration, but the big question now is who is driving this digital transformation. And I think as process, these kind of tools, they lead us towards taking a more critical stance. And I think this is important. And school leaders, I think, as you were mentioned in Pasi, are a very critical group. They're distinct from the teachers, and they need special training and support as well, because now the responsibilities they have are quite different. We, in the study on digital well-being, and we're going to be touching upon AI as well, because it appears to be one of the very critical things that touches upon well-being in digital education, is like school leaders are faced with challenges that they were not faced before, and they don't have the expertise and they need support. So some countries, they're trying to do trainings for them, or others, they put intermediate organizations to support schools with data privacy issues, maintenance issues, procurement issues. So, I mean, we're looking into the developments and seeing where we can position ourselves. Again, SELFIE for innovation is also a big thing we have in mind, like how schools who want to move beyond, although, I mean, there is no threshold so much in SELFIE, though we have a 5-point scale, but it's more like the discussion around how do we develop, what are our needs, which I think is critical here. But we would like to think and integrate at some point in SELFIE processes that can support schools to innovate. Art for Change was along these lines, but for example, like putting on the side time for teachers to experiment, or creating something like greenhouses for schools to do their experimentation. This is something which is expected. If you look at the guidelines of the Commission on AI and teachers, they are expected the schools to try out the systems. But the whole structure of the organization needs to change so as to support this kind of activities. So now we're trying to grasp and then translate these things to SELFIE. I don't know, I hope it makes sense. I don't know if you want to have a follow-up on this or questions.
Thanks, this really makes sense, and I'm really eager to follow the progress and development work you have done and will be doing in the future. So one question about the well-being. So these well-being issues are a very high topic, and of course these problems with learning disabilities or mental problems. So, and how we can compensate, for example, learning disabilities with computers or learning methods or something like that. So how important you see that this kind of inclusion idea and an idea of the compensating these learning disabilities and have teachers the skills and methods to utilize technology to help the students with learning disabilities, for example.
So is this a question for the well-being study? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, because I have a cold and I have apologies, I cannot hear very well. But we're looking what we're trying to do with the well-being study, and eventually the output of the study will be translated into items in SELFIE. Is among what you were saying, inclusion. There's a lot of emphasis on the risks, which is important, where we'll try to integrate the results. But there's something very important, what you said, like how we can harness the potential of technologies to support the student self-realization and reaching their potential. And this study is going to focus a lot on this. And I have to say that it's not easy, because this is something that Deidre said at the beginning. Everything, like use of technology, is very much contextualized. So you cannot link directly the tool with outputs or learning outcomes, but you need to see into the context, and you need to look into what are the aspects that can support students and teachers into a positive way of engaging with technology. So we are shifting to what we recently found is called positive computing. And we're trying to work in this direction so that we look also in the positive side of the technologies, how they support the potential of the students.
Yeah, maybe just to add, like from the beginning, we've never been, I mean, those tools aren't particularly kind of pro technology, and actually you won't find any reference to a particular technology. So I think AI is a challenge, but I think at the heart of SELFIE is really about the learning and the learning design, and you know, the why of technology use. So we've had no agenda other than to kind of help the kind of human and messy bit of education, which is the conversations that need to take place within the school, within the staff room. You know, what are the students thinking? Like, what are the leadership teams thinking? So I think that's always driven us in a way. And, you know, we definitely have to kind of, you know, look at our frameworks, look at the question sets within the tool, like we did during the pandemic. We added that set, as Renier said, on blended learning. So, you know, for sure we need to kind of evolve, but you know, I really think we need to stay true to the origins of SELFIE, which was always about the kind of teaching and learning, the inclusion, the meaningful, the relevant learning as well, because ultimately that's why we deploy technology in the first place. So.
Really good answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will end our recording for this session here and continue for some minutes still with our participants and speakers. But if you are watching on YouTube after the fact, please join us also next time. We are next time continuing on November 16th at the same time. So see you there. Everyone else, do not go anywhere.